Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Rockstar 101. His name is Brandon. He's the DJ.
His name is Shim. He is the Rockstar. Class is in session. And as we kick off this episode of Rockstar 101, we have to honor the late, great Eddie Van Halen, who recently passed away from cancer. And I figured we would kind of dive into this topic because he was the icon of icons when it came to guitar play and how he played and the way that he wrote songs. And we did the Mount Rushmore of guitarists on the morning show that I'm on. We did this a while ago, and of course Eddie Van Halen was up there. I think the other three were Jimi Hendrix, Chuck Berry, and I think Eric Clapton. I think those were our four. Yeah, I think those were our four, but Eddie Van Halen was one of the obvious ones. So let's kick things off. Like, what's your first memory of Van Halen?
My first memory is Jump. But you got to keep in mind, like Van Halen is one of the bands that is an it's a global band, right? But in terms of the Australian disconnect, like a couple of songs got played on the radio over here and on the music stations over here, but in America they were Van Halen. In Australia, when I was a kid, they played Jump and they played like Hot for Teacher a little bit, but mostly it was Jump. And so that...
No Panama?
Panama a little. Panama they did. You're right. Panama actually was probably played more than Hot for Teacher just because our radio over here would be really a little bit more vanilla and Hot for Teacher was kind of a little more grungy and up-tempo and sexy. But Jump and Panama, they got played, and then the rest of them, all the other stuff that were like, significant hits in the Sammy Hagar days, they didn't make it to Australia. So that's why whenever the Van Halen versus Van Hagar discussion comes up, I can't weigh in on it much because I didn't grow up with that stuff. But my main thing was knowing that Van Halen, like the first memory that I ever had of Van Halen, dude, is in the Back to the Future when he you know the scene I'm talking about where Marty McFly pretends to be an alien to his dad because his dad reads comic books.
And the cassette tape, that's a Van Halen solo, isn't it?
Exactly. And he just puts the thing on his dad's, the headphones on his dad's head, wakes him up by playing Van Halen solo, and it sounds, because it's 1950 and Van Halen's 30 years away, it sounds like alien noise, alien talk, and it's genius. It's fucking genius. So that was my very, very first memory of Van Halen. What about you?
I think mine's probably pretty similar. It had to have been MTV playing the videos. I don't remember the first experience I had with Van Halen. I do remember listening to it a lot as a kid, such as the staples, Jump and Panama and Hot for Teacher and stuff like that. But oddly enough, my first real memory of that group didn't even really have anything to do with Van Halen other than David Lee Roth, because when he covered, was it I Wish They All Could Be California Girls? He covered that, didn't he? I remember seeing that video and thinking, oh, cool, Van Halen. I didn't know that was already a song that was done. I didn't know he was doing a cover because I was too young to know that. And then as I was watching it, you know how on the bottom left they would always put the artist, the song, the album, the record label, all that information down there, and it just said David Lee Roth, and I'm like, wait a minute, like that's Van Halen, what the hell? Like, and that, like, it blew my mind that I was watching this video, that the entire time as I was watching it, I was expecting it to be Van Halen,
right?
But it was this just the guy that was the lead singer, and then it kind of took the wind out of the sails a little bit, where I was like, well, that's not as cool as it was because it's not Van Halen. That's just the guy. Of course, on top of that, I didn't even know that it was not even a song that he wrote. Like, I'm like, this is a great song.
Right.
California Girls. Yeah, this is great. Not realizing that it had been previously done.
Yeah. That's one of the worst things you can do in high school. If you go to high school and you're like, dude, have you heard the new Faith No More song? It's called Easy. They wrote an amazing song. And then you go to school and you tout it. And I remember I did that. I was that kid. That was when I first learned, like, hey, you need to find out who wrote the song that you're into. Because a lot of time, that was the first time I learned of a cover song when I was in high school. And I was like, and I just got the shit kicked out of me for being that kid that was like, dude. And the funny thing is, Faith No More is Faith No More. No one listened to the fucking Commodores. No one was around going, oh no, I jammed the Commodores. I am a true fan. Like, no one, they just wanted, like, you just can't make those kind of mistakes when you're a kid. They just fucking, kids will just destroy you. At least they do in Australia.
Mm-hmm. That actually kind of brings up a side story here. When we were talking to Jim Brewer when he was in town, and he was talking about Metallica's, I think it's Bread Fan, and the intro to that, and then the Red Hot Chili Peppers song that sounds almost identical to the intro to Bread Fan. He got a hold of, I think it was Lars, and he's like, Red Hot Chili Peppers got this song, man. It sounds just like Bread Fan. Oh my God, they're just totally ripping you guys off. And then that's when Lars had to tell him that Bread Fan was technically a cover of a song from a group called Budgie.
Right.
And Jim Brewer's like, I felt like this big. He's like, because I had no idea. Like, he was calling up to be like, dude, they're ripping you off, not even realizing the song that he was talking about was a cover the entire time.
Place. Yeah.
But then I do remember when, man, talk about just weird random memories to things, when it moved over to Van Hagar.
Yeah.
But it had already been Van Hagar for a while, was when the song Right Now was released.
Right.
Because I don't remember if it was that song was used in a Crystal Pepsi video, or if Crystal Pepsi was used in that video, or I'm completely misremembering everything here. But that's the memory that I have of that. But as you go through the course of time with Van Halen, through Sammy Hagar, and then they even had that other vocalist for a while. Do you remember who he was?
Oh yeah, I looked that up again last night, but I forget. There was some guy in like the late 90s for like one album.
Yeah.
And then they sort of took a hiatus after 2000, and then they
they reunited with Hagar. They did that joint tour, I believe, where they had both Van Hagar and Van Halen, where they had David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar out there at the same time.
I didn't know about that. That's the thing. Like my awareness of Van Halen came more on a personal level from Ross Hogarth. Like I became more aware of Eddie as a guy than Van Halen as a legacy before I understood how amazing they really were. And I thought it was hilarious when I would actually watch Van Halen live videos and watch him play after I'd already been like, dude, Tom Morello is God and Hendrix is God, and I would rip those guys off. And I never really got into Van Halen. I never listened to him as a guitar player. I listened to the singles, because the thing that I realized after like looking up a few things again last night, which everybody does after a god passes, is that everyone ripped him off. Like, ripped him off. Like fucking all of the things that you see from guitar players in the mid 80s through to 2000 or even on. It's like Van Halen was the first to do the tappy thing, the two tap, the harmonic, like all that stuff. He was the guy that invented all these things. But if you just know their pop hits, you don't realize what an actual genius he was sometimes, because they were so good at being pop stars as well. They invented the Eminem thing. The brown Eminem story was Van Halen. Normally you don't get to have the top of the mountain pop stardom, holy shit rock legacy stuff, as well as being a true innovator. Usually you're Steve Vai, and you're like, yeah, you're an innovator, but you got no fucking songs. Or you're Frank Zappa, you're a genius.
And then the people who become popular are the ones who rip your shit off.
Exactly. It kind of doesn't really happen. Like, it doesn't happen that the person who creates and like, it happens in comedy. It happens in comedy with, like, Richard Pryor, for example, reinvented the form and became a global sensation because he was recognized as that. But I think it was because every single person could relate to comedy. As long as you're funny to most people, you're going to break through. Whereas if you're a guitar player, if you're making guitar-sounding music, a lot of people don't want to hear that stuff over and over again. They want to hear pop songs. So I think Van Halen knew what they were doing. He was like, I happen to be a genius fucking guitar player, but I really love listening to fucking Beatles and Zeppelin, and like he loved pop rock and roll music with good melodies and dope changes and stuff, and jumping around and being crazy cool. And you watch the videos, dude, he was the sweetest guy in the world. He was so nice. It's painful to watch. He was like always so happy on stage playing. Like, there was no fucking angst or bullshit. He was like, dude, rock and roll, it's awesome. He was so dope.
Well, the interesting thing is the guitar wasn't even his first instrument.
No, it was piano. Right?
And even after that, it was drums.
Oh, well, there you go. Tappy tap. Yeah.
He had a set of drums that Alex ended up sort of, I guess commandeering would probably be the best way to say it.
Right.
And so it got to the point where Eddie was like, well, you know what? Fine. If you're going to play my drums, I'm going to play your guitar.
Right.
And
I
that's
didn't
kind
know
of
it was
how they
like
ended
that.
up just swapping there. Yeah.
I didn't know it was like that. I knew that they swapped, but it was because of okay.
Yeah, we had a lot of tributes this week, and that was one of the
Sure.
clips where it's Eddie Van Halen talking about how, hey, if you're going to take my drums, I'm going to go play your guitar then. And he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Another story was, I mean, you've heard this one, that he's the guitar on Michael Jackson's Beat It.
Yeah, that's the big one, yeah.
Did you hear how he rearranged it?
How he rearranged Beat It?
Yeah.
No, I didn't hear that. Tell me that.
So the story goes here. It says, when it came time to record Van Halen's iconic solo on Michael Jackson's Beat It, producer Quincy Jones gave Van Halen carte blanche to rearrange the part he was playing over. And here's a quote from Eddie. It says, I listened to the song and I immediately go, can I change some parts? I turn to the engineer and I go, okay, from the breakdown, chop in this part. Go to this piece, pre-chorus to the chorus, out. It took him maybe 10 minutes to put it together, and I proceeded to improvise 2 solos over it.
Yeah.
So that's how he almost completely redid Michael Jackson's Beat It. I remember for years, that wasn't a known fact. Like, not a lot of people remembered that he was the guitar on Beat It.
Oh, dude, I remember that. Every guitar player remembers that. You know why? Because a lot of guitar players are pissed. Like, hardcore fucking, like, Van Halen is God. They're like, dude, I've been listening to Van Halen for 10 years, and you only realized when he played on Michael Jackson, you fucking consumer. You're a consumer. Like, but the thing that I love about it is the story that I always heard, which goes in conjunction with what you just said. He came in, he heard it, he figured out what the part was. He went and he played it in one take. And apparently the first take is magic. Like the second take is, but they actually went in and he played it down and they said, great, that's a take. It's perfect. This is holy shit Eddie Van Halen magic. They recorded it distorted because when he plugged in and they went to kind of do a test run and record it, they recorded it. And he was playing too hot, too loud. And so it distorted on the way in. They couldn't use it. So all they did on the second take was just turn the input down so it didn't blow. Yeah, just turn it down a bit so it didn't blow the speakers out. And then he did it a second time, and that's the take. It was a one fucking take thing. They did 2 takes because the first one distorted, not because they needed to comp them together. He did it in one fucking take. And this is my favorite thing, all right? This is another thing that I read up that I didn't know, which I thought was genius. You know about Gene Simmons' involvement in early Van Halen?
I swear I think I heard something earlier this week just because we had a lot of Gene Simmons clips when we were talking about Eddie Van Halen passing away.
Right.
But remind me.
He was Kiss was big obviously, but they'd been given their own label, and he was like, I'm scouting people for my label. Went to Van Halen, flew him around, did a bunch of demos at his studio. Eventually the label passed, which of course is the dumbest fucking thing to do in the world, but they passed. But later on, Gene Simmons apparently still said, hey, I want to demo up some songs for the Kiss record. You know, like I got a few songs that I'm going to pitch for the record and do whatever. But the Kiss was on a hiatus. The whole band didn't want to get together just to make demos. So he called Van Halen in, and Eddie demoed up the songs and played the guitars on it. Is it Ace? Ace is the guitarist in Kiss, right? That was the guitarist. Is it Ace? I forget the name of the guitar player.
I don't know Kiss that well.
Okay, neither do I. That's why
I don't like Kiss.
The guitar player. No, well, the point is that when they brought the guitar player in, he literally had to learn note for note Eddie's parts that Eddie just threw down on a whim. He was like, yeah, man, okay, so the song goes, like what you said with Beat It.
Check this out.
The song goes like this, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, cool, da-da-da-da, cool, sounds good. He's like, yeah. And then the guitarist in Kiss came in and said, wow, that sounds really good. And Gene Simmons just said, yeah, you're going to need to just sit with that for a couple of weeks and learn that and play it note for note. And they insisted that he play it like Van Halen because it was like, you can't, like, with respect, we got Van Halen on a demo for an hour. We got to make it sound like that. Like we caught lightning in a bottle. You got to recreate it. And he had to fucking step up his game and learn that shit. Apparently, allegedly. Not saying anything bad about Kiss. I love Kiss, but apparently that's true. And you can't blame the guy because it's fucking Van Halen. If Van Halen came and played on my record, I'd say, I guess I got to learn how to do that now. I'll see you next year. You know.
I'm sorry. I'm flipping through. I had a whole bunch of stories about Eddie Van Halen here because the dude was a true icon. Did you know that was his guitar in Back to the Future?
Oh, wait a minute. That the one that that Marty McFly plugs in. Gets blown
The
away.
story says here, a scene in 1985's Back to the Future features Marty McFly slipping a cassette marked Edward Van Halen into a Walkman and blasting it into his future father's ears. That's a scene you were just talking about where he wakes him up and he's got the nuclear suit on, or the hazmat suit on.
Yeah.
In 2012, the guitarist admitted it was just a bunch of noise he recorded and not part of an unreleased song. So that truly was him just wailing. Yeah, that was him just wailing
so that's also,
on that
so the
part
fucking
right there.
the movie producers actually called Van Halen and said, "Can you jerk off for a minute on tape and send it to us?" And he did. And that's
It
what
worked.
they used. That's fucking great. He's probably just plugged it. There you go, and it's fucking iconic. It's awesome.
There was also a story that I'd heard because the Frankenstrat, like that was the guitar, like that's the one that he created that from basically pieces of other guitars. I don't have confirmation on this one, but I'd always heard that that was never allowed almost out of his sight,
Right.
Like protected under the most extravagant circumstances at all times, because there were things that he did with that guitar that there were secrets there. He didn't want people to see what he had done. Yeah. So he performed with it and then it would immediately go back into the case. Like this was not something that was put on for anybody just to go mess around with. Like this thing was protected almost like with like a secret service at one point. Yeah,
right. No, that makes sense. Cause I know he built it specially, and it looked fucking dope. It looked like a Frankenstein. It was perfect.
Dude, they've made a ton of merchandise about these. I just looked it up here on eBay. They have shoes that have the design on there. There's flip flops with the design on them. And if you want the shoes, by the way, you're looking at about $2,000.
What?
Yeah.
Dude, you got to be a fan. You've got to be a fan.
Oh, and here's a story from 2009 where it says Van Halen files suit against Nike.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love the fact that he had his own
because
head.
Nike did it without their approval, I guess.
Of course. Yeah, because that's the design.
I assumed that Nike would get the approval. Then again, this was 2009. I think Nike would go ahead and I think that Nike would try to get the approval at this point now when it comes to anything like this. But it says guitarist Eddie Van Halen filed a lawsuit against Nike, alleging the company used the trademarked striped design from his guitar on their new line of Dunk Lows tennis shoes.
Because they're not fucking stupid. They know exactly what they were doing.
And it was the same thing. The suit,
the
suit states that Van Halen received a 2001 copyright for the design on the body of his Frankenstein electric guitar.
Yeah.
I could have sworn, I could have sworn when this first came out that they had gotten the approval from him.
They probably got it afterwards. Yeah.
Oh.
But I just love the fact that he had his own head. Did you know that EVH, Eddie Van Halen, they guitar heads, like he's got his own. Mm-hmm. It's not like a signature series of a Marshall. It's like he's got his own fucking amp. Like that was when I was like, because there's only a handful of amps, that people know, or that people want. Like when you say like, I want, like Slash is great, but Slash doesn't have an amp. And like Steve Vai, I don't think he has an amp. I mean, he might, but it's boutique as shit. But EVH, they're in every guitar center in the fucking country, man. Like that's when you're like, and because he can engineer that stuff. But I just anyway. But did I tell you? I've told you that I played his guitars on Connect, right? Did I tell you how that came about?
You did. You told me how that experience was like none other you had ever had.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, like. Ross Hogarth's a very good friend of mine. He's a Grammy-winning blah 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 mixer, master, engineer, producer, and he worked on all three of my albums, and we became very close. He was one of Eddie's closest friends, and I knew more about Eddie from Ross than from publications and stuff. And I knew that Eddie, for example, basically had like sort of detached significantly from the whole scene and was like, look, I just want to live in my house. I want to make my music. I want to have people who I can trust that I like around. So as a result, he didn't have that many visitors, and Ross was one of his regular visitors. And so when the opportunity came up and was like, hey, we're going to record guitars for Connect, which was my last album with the Puppies, Ross was finishing up with Van Halen. I don't know how exactly it came up, but he literally was like, yo, I'm working with this band. I think Eddie must have heard one of the songs at some point to be able to go, yeah, okay, cool, you can. But it was because of Ross. It was like, Ross was like, look, I'm working with this band. I want to, can I borrow a couple of guitars? And they were the dopest guitars you had ever played in your life. And
like you could tell that there was something special with these guitars.
No, they were perfect. They were shocking. It was shocking. The one that I remember, which is used on it was like 3 guitars, but one of them was just like truly shocking, where you plug it in and you're like, what? How does this sound like this? It was this. It looked like it was a piece of junk. It looked like it was the simplest, cheapest guitar with this sort of brown body that wasn't quite wood, but it was a weird paint thing. It wasn't pretty at all. And then it was really light. It was as light as a feather. It was like as light as your microphone. Like it was it was hollowed out, but it was a real piece of wood. And so you pick it up and you're like, this is fucking shit. This is nothing. This is like something out of a garage sale. And you plug it in and it just plays perfectly. It's perfectly intonated. It's perfectly set up. Every chord is so easy. And it had this way of breathing that guitars don't do. Normally guitars have like they're either a straight edge, they're like a box where it's like you hear boom and it's in key technically, or it's like a straight line where you're playing a solo in a single note and it goes ding, and it's like it's thin. There's a thinness to it when you run it through an amplifier, because an amplifier by definition compresses the sound. It compresses it and then amplifies it. We didn't need to plug this thing into an amplifier, really. We literally just plugged it into a DI, which is just the thing that gets it into the computer, and turned it up a little bit, and then it just fucking sounded amazing. Like, we didn't run it through anything. We tried to run it through amps and distortion. It just ruined the sound. It just had to be.
So it sounded better with nothing else.
It sounded better with nothing on
it.
It was. I don't think it was a guitar that he engineered or anything like that, like Frankenstein, but it was one that he had handpicked and gone, you know, I'm going to have that guitar hell or high water, and then set it up. Like, had his guys, like, there are people who work on the guitar to make sure that it's like perfectly intonated and the pickup is in the right spot and it's all to make it sound the best that it can sound. But a lot of the time with a piece of, with a guitar, it comes down to the piece of wood. And there's a lot of people, when you go like to secondhand guitar stores, I've heard people say they went and picked up a guitar and you pick it up at their house and it just sounds amazing. And you go, where'd you get this? Oh, it was some op shop or some secondhand store in the middle of nowhere. But they say like, oh, it was the right piece of wood. I got lucky. This is just the right piece of wood. And sometimes that happens. And this was the right fucking piece of wood. Like, it was unbelievable, dude. And it's on every song.
He knew what he was looking for.
If you listen to the solo for Healing Now, that whole solo was done on the Van Halen guitar. I forget what the guitar, what brand it was. It wasn't like a famous brand. It was some boutiquey weird thing. And then the rhythms on pretty much every track that has like non-humongous, like Gunfight and Die to Save You and those songs didn't make it on those, but everything that had a clean sound, you can hear a Van Halen guitar on most of my last record, which I think is dope. It's very fortunate to be able to say, and I have to say mad thanks to Ross Hogarth for that, because that's all Ross. Van Halen, maybe he heard one of my songs and went, oh, that's cool, but he didn't give a fuck about me. It was because of Ross Hogarth calling in a mad favor and being like, you know, it's one of those great moments of the people you know.
I got a whole bunch more stories here about Eddie Van Halen, and the one thing. So he passed away from cancer, and did you hear what he believed caused it?
Yeah, the pick.
Yeah. So doctors and everybody was like, well, it was probably from all the years of smoking cigarettes, because I believe it was it mouth or throat cancer?
It was throat cancer.
It was one of the two where it was, it affected his palate and everything.
Maybe it was mouth.
And his belief was he had this metal pick that he used to hold in his mouth.
Yeah.
And he believed that was what had caused the cancer. Another great story about Eddie Van Halen is that he apparently kind of smiled through the whole thing. He didn't let it get him down. There was a few different stories that we were playing back this week of people talking about him and talking about how they would run into him later on in life, even after he was diagnosed. And, they had to remove some of his mouth because of this. And he would show them kind of the damage that was done. But it never came off. Yeah, it never came off as, oh, look at, woe is me. Yeah. It was really like, yeah, I got this thing, I'm going to fight it and I'm going to beat it. And, we're going to keep rocking on, man. And it's just stories like that show you the true entity of the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like their core, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's I had an opportunity to meet him once with Ross. We were driving past his house and he was like, oh, at some point I'll take you over to Eddie's. And he was one of the guys that could have done that. And I was like,
that's when you should go now.
No, he literally was like, we were driving up and I think he called and he wasn't home and he was like, oh, at some point I should take you over to Eddie's because he could do that. And it was like, and I remember thinking like, yeah, that'd be great. But I didn't chase him up. I probably should have chased him up and been like, so when are we going? But I didn't want to be that guy. So, but from what I always go back to Ross because he actually was friends with him. He actually knew him. And he said exactly the same thing. He was just the sweetest guy in the world. And you can see it in the old videos when he's playing in front of 20,000 people. He's just so happy. He's not trying to be cool. He's not trying to do whatever. He's just having the best time. And he's clearly just grateful and humble and stoked, just fucking so stoked to be playing music. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that, a lot of people, they try really, really hard to emulate Eddie or to whoever or to copy or to become like. But the people that you usually idolize the most are kind of just existing in that place. They're not trying. They're having a good time. They're existing in there. They're calm. They're peaceful. They're like, I'm doing it because it's so much fun. They're not doing it because I want to do this because if I can reach this point, then I can get a girlfriend and then chicks will like me because they don't like me because I'm not on the soccer team. Like when I started music because I was like, this is awesome. A couple of years later, I found out chicks dig guys that can sing, and I was like, fucking awesome. That's like a side effect.
Perks.
Yeah, perks. But I knew a lot of people there was a lot of guys who picked up guitars who just were not very good, and they would just sit in the schoolyard and sing, and girls would sit next to them, and I go, oh, I get what you're doing. You're into music, and you're trying, and you have like an agenda or whatever. And there are musicians who become very famous who are usually horrible people to be around, who have an agenda, and they're like, yeah, I want to make music for some extra. You could tell with Eddie, he was just, that's why I know from Ross, after like somewhere after 2000 or whatever, he made a life change and was like, look, I'm not just going to go and do every show and just make records when people tell me to make records. And he cut a lot of stuff out of his life and was like, and I think he took a monetary hit as well. He was like, I don't care if I don't make any more money. I got my money. But I'm like, I just want to have a clean, peaceful, simple life. And that's why after 2000, it wasn't as crazy. It wasn't because the band became less popular. He actually was like, I just want to play music and enjoy my life and be cool. And like going back to what you said, he was a really genuine, special guy. And you see the posts. Everyone was posting on Facebook that was like, this time I met Eddie, he was so nice. This time I met him, he was like really cool and chill. He was the sweetest guy in the world. I texted Ross the moment that I heard. I saw the post and I just went straight to texting Ross and I just checked in on him because I knew that like if you had the blessing of being a friend of Van Halen, you were in pain at that point. Like you lost a true, like a brother. And he was, and he is still, it's still fresh, but like that's the type of guy that he is. I think that's something important that a lot of people take when they think about someone like Van Halen. They go, oh, we lost a great guitarist. Well, we lost a great person. Like he was really, the reason he sounded that way is because of the way he lived his life, because he really just existed for the music. And that's the thing that I think it's a shame that sometimes people have to pass to realize, oh, he was actually just like, that's just how he was. He wasn't just a great guitar player. You become great at a task because you're a great person. You can't get to that level without being in check with yourself and your world around you and stuff.
Well, we do have a couple of stories of him getting cranky, apparently.
Oh, okay,
with people.
Fine, okay.
Well, because there's one here that I found.
Why do you go to stories of David Lee Roth getting cranky? Because I hear there's a bunch of those.
Oh, I've heard some. Yeah, okay, fuck it, I'll tell it. So, I had a friend of mine. He was working. I worked with him at a radio station in Florida, but his story came from when I think he worked at a venue, and it was his job to go pick up the talent, whether it be at the airport, take him to the hotel, or the hotel to the venue, or whatever the case may be. And he went to go pick up David Lee Roth. And as he picks up David Lee Roth, there's these two just gigantic men surrounding him, obviously. Like they're just these big old bodyguards. And when they get into the back seat, one of the guys like looks straight at my friend and he goes, "You don't turn around and you don't look in your rearview mirror." And that's when my friend was like, "Oh shit." And he said within like 5 minutes of the car ride, he smelled just this horrific smell that he had ever smelled. It didn't smell like tobacco. It didn't smell like marijuana. And of course, everybody assumes like, dude, he was smoking crack.
Right.
Like, you know, they're making that leap, but that was the bit, like, you don't, like, he's not allowed to like look up and then, you know, check his rearview mirror. So he's like, I never really saw what it was. He goes, but it was horrific. And
God.
he didn't have too much interaction with David Lee Roth other than he was a weird dude. And you could tell he was on something.
Right.
But so that's my story. But this one comes from Twitter, where somebody says, true story, in 1978, Eddie Van Halen got so pissed at David Lee Roth backstage that he threw a bowl of guacamole at him. The guac didn't hit Roth. It hit Steve Perry, though.
Fuck.
And Steve Perry cried.
Really?
That's what it says.
It says he cried. Why? Because the guacamole hurt, or because it came from Van Halen?
I don't know, but it says here, this is a true story according to Running with the Devil, the 2017 memoir by Van Halen's former manager.
Dude, if I got hit by guacamole, if Van Halen threw anything at me, I'd cry. I'd be like, dude, why don't you like me?
God, I gotta get back into reading rock biographies, man, because like that one right there, the Running with the Devil sounds like an amazing one. I never read the Heroin Diaries, which should be just
the Heroin Diaries is
an amazing biography.
Amazing.
We gotta start getting into that. We need shit. Here we go. We're gonna start a rock biography book club.
Really? We're announcing this live on podcasts. Like, we can't edit this. We're stuck with this now.
Fuck it. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna start a rock biography book club.
Okay.
Huh?
Okay. So what's the first? Is the Heroin Diaries the first one?
I don't know. Let me
put together some options.
Is there like a pop-up book we could start with?
Pop-up? No, you're going to have to actually read, motherfucker. You're going to have to pick up a novel.
Dude, how rad would that be? Like, you got the pop-up book, and maybe it's a Van Halen biography. When it pops up, the pop-up is his hands like fucking like that. How great would that be?
That'd be awesome.
Do you want to see that again?
No one wants to see that again. So we've got, but I think there are some great. Wow, just keep going. There are some great stories in a lot of those things. I remember the Aerosmith one had a lot of great stories. And the
an Aerosmith one. It's Steve Kramer's.
Well, there's one that's the official one. No, there's one that's actually written by all four members and like one or two tour managers, and it actually tells, like it picks like 20 great stories of Aerosmith and everyone's perspective. You know, are you listening?
No, sorry. Because I knew the second I said Steve Kramer, I'm like, that's not it, idiot. Like, that's not his name is Joey Kramer.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Go rewind 15 seconds.
There's an Aerosmith book. Anyone in the Discord, help me out with the name of this. There's an Aerosmith book. Which is they'll have one story, but they have multiple perspectives on the same event from different band members. And usually the drummer in the band was like, dude, I don't know, I just wanted to play
Joey Kramer.
Drum. Yeah, he was like, I just wanted to play drums. So like, but there's.
Fuck, do you remember what happened to him like last year?
What happened?
Where they basically locked him out of rehearsals and like kicked him out of the band.
What? No.
You don't remember this?
No.
I think it was when Aerosmith had their Vegas residency.
Yeah.
And they had their rehearsal spot, and they because this happened a couple of times over the past couple of years. Remember, this happened to Brian Johnson with AC/DC, which, by the way, they got a new album coming out.
With Brian Johnson?
Yeah, new song dropped this week. We got to play it. But this happened.
Oh, that's right.
Where,
I heard about that.
Again, we're going back to our the time I got to hang out with Jim Brewer, because he's good friends with like Brian Johnson,
right.
And what he was saying was, Brian Johnson got home and basically his stuff showed up, all the stuff that they had of his that was on tour, and it was just like, okay, here you go. And that was it.
Yeah.
Nobody told him anything. He was just very unceremoniously kicked out of the band.
I can't believe what does that feel like? I can't imagine what that feels like.
Then they ended up going with Axl Rose. Remember, he toured with the band for a little bit, but now they have since made up, and now it's all the original guys, with Phil Rudd and Angus Young and
Malcolm's
Cliff
not
Williams.
There, right? Malcolm isn't there.
Malcolm passed away.
Yeah, I know. So when you say all the original guys, it's not all the original guys.
Well, the ones that are still around.
Yeah, but just wanted to clarify in case anyone's like, "Oh, Malcolm." No. So
anyway, we've gone really
Brian's deaf.
He's having difficulty hearing.
I thought that was why.
I
didn't know it was so unceremonious. I thought the reason that Axl went on tour was because Brian was deaf or at least had significant hearing problem, and he was a replacement singer for a short while.
But see, that's the thing, is that's what the news was reporting, is that Brian Johnson's battling hearing loss. So he has left the band. They're now looking for somebody to fill in. Oh, look, Axl Rose wants to do it, so that's what we're going to do. When we spoke with Jim Brewer about it, he was like, hey, yeah, from what he was told, Brian Johnson had no idea what was going on. Right. He just had his stuff show up at his house, like just randomly. And it was like, oh, so I guess I'm not in AC/DC anymore.
That's so.
But then they, of course, they have since, made up, and they do have their new album coming out.
Yeah, you would think that after the 40 years that band has been together, or how many years has Brian been in the band now? It's 30.
Didn't Bon Scott die in 80?
Yeah, so it's 30 fucking years. 30 fucking
40.
years.
40.
Oh shit, you're right. It's 40 years. Totally spaced on that. 40 years, and you think after 40 years, either one, they would be a little bit more ceremonious, or A, B, 2, whatever I said. You'd get past your shit. Like, after 40 years, hasn't everyone gotten over their baggage and been like, look, I don't like you, you don't like me, whatever it is.
Remember, Joey, and this is what ties into the other story, and we got to start wrapping up this episode, but hell, we really, just kind of went on a whirlwind here at the end.
Yeah, but
because remember, that was the thing with, he just reunited with them earlier this year, but it was during the band's residency, I believe, that they locked out
Squirrel.
Joey Kramer out of the rehearsals.
And for what purpose? They getting another drummer, or they just thought, nah, fuck it, he'll play along?
I don't know if it was ever really explained. I got to read more into this, but it was. There's video of him showing up to the rehearsal place, and there's two bouncers out front that won't let him in.
Oh my god!
And he's 70 years old now, man. So like, you feel bad for the dude. And if you read his biography, you're like, fuck, that guy's got problems upstairs, man. Like, he battles demons.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like, he starts off his book. I can't remember what the tour was, but this was after, because Aerosmith made it big. They went away. They did Walk This Way, Run DMC, kind of remixed it, and then they kind of hit big again.
Yeah.
And then you got to like Get a Grip and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was after they've made it big again, and they're just like one of the biggest things on the planet. And he starts off by saying he should be in one of the greatest places he could ever possibly be, because they're on top of the world.
Yeah.
He was like crying uncontrollably and shaking because of depression and anxiety. And I think he had already been sober for like 6 years. So it wasn't like he could blame it on substances. And it was just this, it's a rough one to get through. Right. I still haven't even been able to finish it, because it's not an easy read in the sense of, he really, really he lets it all out there in this book.
Right.
Joey Kramer's biography. But go check that one out. So we're going to have to find this. And if anybody listening to this wants to jump in on a rock biography book club. Yeah. Now, look, we're not reading a book in a week. I don't have that kind of time. We're not going to be powering.
We'll go chapter by chapter, discuss chapters.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the book, but we're going to definitely need to do this. So if anybody has any suggestions, this is the perfect way for me to roll right into our social medias. Yes. You can find Shim over on Twitter. It is at Shimmoore, SHIMMOORE. You can also find him over on Facebook. That one is just simply Shim, but he's got the blue check mark. Right. You can find me over on Reddit or on Instagram. It is at The Real Brandalorian. Again, that's at The Real Brandalorian. You can always drop me a message on either one. Speaking of which, I did get a question on Instagram from our good friend Lucia, who is a frequent listener of the podcast.
Lucia.
Has reached out to us
Hello,
times.
Lucia.
And she did have a quick question here that I want to ask. She was looking to get into a new band, and she says, how do you draw the line between butt rock and just rock?
Fuck,
for me, I'm going to let Shim take this, because she did say, she thinks Shim would know how to do this. For me, the way that we were talking about the definition of butt rock is that's not anything you can control. I think that's a definition of people who want to hate on a specific genre of rock. Is what it had kind of morphed into. It didn't really matter what the genre was. It was really more or less people just kind of nitpicking at other people's preferences in music.
I have a different. I think my answer actually might beat your answer on this one. In terms of people who are trying to create music, And so what was the question specifically so that I don't answer it?
How do you draw the line between butt rock and just rock?
The difference between rock and butt rock is authenticity. If you create a song that has a chord progression that sounds generic and a drum beat that sounds straightforward and it's got a big, sounds like Five Finger Death Punch or Nickelback, but if you have authentic vocals and lyrics, most importantly, something that is just genuinely pure, most importantly, it just needs to make sure it doesn't sound like a pose or sound like it's just sound like a pose. Like if you are raw and authentic and organic and putting something out there that's a little bit risky, that's a little bit like rock and roll takes risks. You're talking about rock and roll. You're talking about Bob Dylan. You're talking about Van Halen. You're talking about Hendrix.
Right from the heart, right from your soul.
Yeah, or whatever.
Bob Dylan.
Yeah. That's how you should have done the fucking socials. But like the Beatles, music that challenges people and inspires people and takes risks and talks about subject matter that, as opposed to butt rock. Butt rock is more of a pose. So that's the difference. And that's how I think, as long as you take a risk and put yourself out there and be authentically you, then it's not going to be butt rock. If you're trying to sound like someone else, or you're trying to fit into a box, you'll probably land a butt rock.
I still like my definition better, but anyway. I'm going to finish doing the socials like this. If you want to become a supporter of the podcast, well, head to anchor.fm/Rockstar101. The voices all sort of start morphing into the same thing, don't they?
They do.
Somebody mentioned I started to sound like Quagmire from Family Guy.
That sounds so much like, who said that's totally right? Quagmire.
I think it was somebody on YouTube, maybe. I can't remember. Whoever made the comment, thank you, because it was that's exactly what it ended up morphing into.
It's so annoying.
I was just missing the giggity goo.
Giggity goo. Finish it
but
with
a big thank you to our supporters. We have Victoria, Veronica, and Taryn. Thank you for being a supporter of this podcast. Yes. If you'd like to be a supporter, if you're watching this on YouTube, click the link below. But if you're listening to this as a podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get them, you can always head to anchor.fm/Rockstar101. Of course, I got to plug the beard struggle really quick. If you're liking how the old beard's looking there, go to YouTube if you haven't seen it. Go to the Beard Struggle. They've got all different kinds of products. You've got the beard balms. You've got the oils and shampoos and conditioners and all the. It's arguably the best product that I've ever used on my beard, and I've used a ton of stuff on my beard before. So go check it out and then use Brandalorian as your code at checkout, and you're going to get yourself a nice little discount there. Again, that's the Beard Struggle, and use code Brandalorian.
And I just found out that actually one of our hardcore rebels, Tammy, was the one who said Quagmire. And Tammy just told me that on the Discord, so you can watch. You can actually be here while we record Rockstar 101 live. She just told me on the Discord right now while you were plugging the socials. If you want to, giggity. So gross, dude. If you, I'm trying to plug something else. The Patreon, all right. If everyone who's listening, if you want to hang out with us while we record this, you can sign up to the Patreon. The link will be in the YouTube as well, and you can hang out with all the hardcore Hollywood Rebellion rebels. In the meantime, thank you very much, Brandon. Do you have anything else?
My favorite Quagmire scene is when they tell everybody that there's porn on the internet he didn't know about because he still buys the magazines. And dude, there's a bunch of free stuff on the internet. Right. So then they don't see him for a week, and when he actually finally steps out of his house, his one arm is just completely fucking ripped because all he's been doing is whacking off the whole time.
You mean his arm is ripped?
He's just fucking. It's like he's got his one skinny little arm, and then he's got this one that's all yoked up.
Jesus Christ, that's funny.
That's all I had to say. On that note, his name's Shim. Giggity, giggity. He's the rock star.
His name is Brandon. He's the DJ.
Class dismissed. You like that?
You got to get out more, brother.